what a beautiful morning. I've been out since 7:30. I'm going to go back to this park I went through on foot and do a little ride through with the Osmo Action Cam to have a look, because it's a nice track, I guess you say. For me, the distance is doable, so it's not going to kick my ass like the rides to the coast do, or the rides to Rio Mayor. But yeah, it's a cool little park, so I wanted to ride through it, document this little ride. I posted I guess a piece of art, a meme from a guy I follow. You know, these kind of memes and artwork and so on have a important function in society and culture. They're, you know, when they're done well, they're supposed to make us think. Now, they might offend us because we might not like what they make us think about, and that's fine if you're offended. The artwork, cartoon or meme or whatever, is probably doing its job, doing what it was intended to do. So if you make a picture of Harris, the presidential candidate in the United States, who was the vice president for the past 4 years, and the vice president for the last, you know, for the whole period, including what's been going on in Gaza and the West Bank, even before, obviously, before you know, October 7th, which was a terrible thing. People tend to fight when they're treated poorly and when they have reasons to fight, and war is not nice, ever. Anyway, a lot of the initial press reports have been completely shown to be false, and there's plenty of evidence now about what happened. Collateral damage by the IDF, and, you know, crimes by Hamas, and exaggerations in the press, and so on and so forth. So all of that's out there. If somebody's interested in learning about it, they can. But sometimes when you learn about things like this, it's not very nice. It's kind of uncomfortable because it makes you feel bad. And by far the simplest way to go about life is to believe that your side is perfect, or close to perfect, or much, much better than the other side, and leave it at that. So, you know, I'm a blue team or a red team or whatever team you're on, however you want to characterize it simply. My team is good or much better than the other team. So anything that suggests that my team isn't very good either, or that we're the baddies, is just dismissed completely. There are terms for this I won't bore you with, but anyway, the idea is that I'm not going to listen to that. I'm not going to pay attention to that. That's not legitimate. my side is good, their side is evil. So if you put up a piece of art or a meme or whatever that is harshly critical of something you like, it'll rub you the wrong way. And then I'll be in trouble because I posted it. So how dare you? Which is typical. And I wrote something about the post, with the post. Explaining my feelings about peacemakers and contradictions and hypocrisy and so on. Not in those terms, but in poetic narrative, I guess. Quoting somebody talking back to me. But anyway, people don't read that, they just see the picture and react to it. Then if you try to place that picture in context, they're not going to look at it because it makes them angry that you suggest that there's perhaps more to learn about the situation, that there are important angles of the story that you have to understand before you can really make a clear and fair judgment about what's going on. We don't do that. America's a powerful country. It's rich in many ways. It still has a lot of resources. You can still get your copper out of the ground and gas. So anyway, for a powerful country, there are far too many illiterate people, in my opinion. So a country like the United States, like my country, should have incredibly intelligent, intellectually curious people. That's not to say that the best people in the world are intellectually curious people. Everybody has to, read a small library of books to be considered a decent human being. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that, basic literacy, why? Of course, there is a class issue there. You don't have to go all woke. It's not only certain aspects of, preconditional racism in the culture or things like that. Yeah, it's also, I think that in my case, I think that the players really don't want people to be that thoughtful, critical. They don't want them to interrogate things or to really understand how the system works, because they might push back and say, we don't like the way you're doing things. Now, there's a vast machine for information dissemination across media and academia and many other institutions and segments of society that spin stories for us so that we don't have to think too hard. And human beings are true believers. We're the believing ape, and we like to believe. It feels better to believe than to disbelieve. And so skepticism isn't like, I think for many people it's not the default. You know, it's like, let me take a step back, read about it for a couple of weeks and get back to you on my opinion on it. I see you've shared a lot of things here. I might want to look at it a bit, then I'll get back to you. It's just knee-jerk reaction based on what you have been trained to pay attention to, or what you pay attention to based on what's available to you. So, people who watch the news and the social media and so on without supplementing that with reading and inquiry and skepticism will have a very narrow understanding of what's going on. If you look at the zeitgeist, the culture, and read books and papers and long-form articles by responsible investigative journalists or experts, and triangulate all of that information and think about it and let it provide you with a more high-resolution understanding of what's happening. You see, there are all these roads here, and they're all good. I'll take this one today and do the other one next time, the one that goes up. So you want to have a fine-grained, high-resolution understanding as much as possible. Obviously, I'm not an expert in anything, so I have my limitations. When I see things I don't understand, I have to slow down and look these things up. And I do that. Sometimes I'm reading an article with hyperlinks, and when I hit a hyperlink, I go and explore. Then I go back to the article. So an article that's a 10 or 15 minute read, that's a long form. Then for me it would be like a couple hours, because I would be spending the morning just kind of delving into it. If I think there's value there, if there's something interesting that I think I should understand. So this is the ride through. I've got other footage from my walk through, so I won't pause too much because I can intercut it. But here's the little font here. This park is in Benedita, and like I said, I've walked through a number of these trails now since I found the place, and it's never ending. You can turn left and turn right, and if I just try to remember which way I went last time, I can go a different way. And it just provides days and days of fun exploring this park, which I love. You know, a little bit of novelty is extremely good for people. You know, I think, anyway. So some people just would stick to the same road all the time because it's comfortable. They're familiar. I like to go out and see something new each time, which I think is good for me. Yeah, so anyway, I'd like to compare this meme to Hamlet. To be or not to be, that is the question. So Hamlet's holding a skull. Obviously a skull is not a beheaded head. It's different, not quite the same thing, but he's holding a skull, contemplating death and life, existence, you know, ontology. He's thinking about it. And he says, to be or not to be, that is the question. I don't know the whole thing, so I won't butcher it. But I was thinking about writing something to illustrate, to Kamala Harris, to oppose or not to oppose genocide, to make peace or not make peace, to fund covert deep state regime change activities or not, to build infrastructure or not to build infrastructure, to have a highly educated, highly literate society commensurate with your national wealth and prestige or not. And you could go on and on and on. So it behooves someone who wants to be the president of the quote-unquote free world and the leader of democracy to think about these things. And I would imagine there are tens of millions of people in the United States that would like to chime in and say, I want you to think about this, that, or the other thing, And if they really pushed back, and if they organized and had larger groups of organized individuals pushing back and saying, we want you to do this, that, or the other thing, government would probably, governmental leaders and corporate leaders would probably be more accommodating to people's needs. But since they don't, and since we're true believers, and it's easy for us just to sit back and say, yeah, I believe that. I want to believe. Feels good to believe. So I want to feel good. So I'm going to go with that. And anything that goes against that, I'm going to be insulted and hurt and triggered and angry and wonder why my friend, who seems to be fairly open-minded and liberal, could do such a thing, as opposed to be or not to be, to think about this or not to think about that image on social media. Well, I want Kamala Harris and Donald Trump and everybody else who is in a position of leadership to think very carefully about what they're doing, what they're promoting. And of course, in my view, all of these leaders get co-opted and absorbed by a system that is, oh, too bad, this is blocked off, unfortunately. I wanted to go down there. It's really unfortunate. For me, that was my objective, and that's not going to happen. So, I would want people to think about these things, and I would want them to read certain things and to say, what's really best for modern technological, industrial, fossil fuel, global capitalized human civilization at this moment. What's the best thing for us? But of course, like Lindsey Graham says, we want to take over Ukraine and control the wealth in Ukraine rather than give it over to somebody else, like Russia. And that's how we think about the whole world, Venezuela and Central America and Mexico. We want to be in control so you can bow down to the rules-based order or you're in trouble. And that's why America financially sanctions 1/3 of the countries in the world. That's a lot. So everyone's under this pressure. And some people think that it might be a good idea to have a multipolar thing going on. Let people in their regions get on with things, do things the way they want to do things. But other people are like, the only way the world's going to know any goodness is if it's run by the United States of America. And what runs the United States of America, if not deep state institutions and oligarchs, plutocrats, uber wealthy people? And it's not to say that they're all in smoke-filled rooms deciding that they have to do things this way. This is how they were educated and brought up. This is what they know. The great game is a way of life. the Tao of the great game. And so these people play it. And in many ways, I would suggest to young people, you decide soon, very soon, whether you want to be a player or not. And if you want to be a player, get busy and figure out how to get rich, because you're going to need capital to make your moves and play the game. And if you want to change things, then you have to think totally differently. Most people, of course, are just going to try to survive, because that's all we can do. So we work hard and do what we can to take care of our family and friends, which is totally normal. So I don't blame people for being illiterate or not, ignorati, willfully ignorant, or time challenged. The U.S. film industry last year was worth $106 billion. Film and entertainment. So Netflix, look at that beautiful dog. Hello, buddy. You are gorgeous. So, that's what's important. So Biden, I read today, pledged $2 billion to upgrade the energy grid, which is a pittance. America's a big country, and that's pretty important infrastructure. And so private groups pledged another $10 billion, which is helpful. That's $12 billion. Still not enough. And who knows if those pledges come in. And then you have the NIMBY lobby, not in my backyard clique, who are going to slow things down, and other forms of politics, as usual. So will anything ever get done? Contrast that with China. Have you been to Shenzhen lately? The big city across from Hong Kong that used to be a fishing village. It's a highly modern, efficient, vibrant mega city in a region we call the Pearl River Delta mega city. A complex from Guangzhou to Hong Kong and Zhuhai and Macau, gigantic part of the world with lots and lots of people. And they're all driving electric cars, and we have high-speed trains from Hong Kong to Beijing, and on and on and on. Because the CCP has a central bank and it can print funds. You have to look at Michael Hudson to learn about these things. Not your typical economist, but a very good one nonetheless. And they can get things done. We can't. We call that freedom. But people who are powerful, who are players, they get things done. Jeff Bezos gets things done. So if you want to be a player, do it now, because your time of playing is short in terms of the great game going back, let's say, to the 17th century onward, or maybe even earlier, the age of discovery, whatever, the age of exuberance. Well, these ages, but yeah, so get busy to play, because the game is coming to an end for many reasons, and one of them is carrying capacity and overshoot. That's something you need to look into if you don't know anything about it. And of course, if all of this is just a big yawn and annoying to you to think about, don't think about it. Do something else. Go duck hunting. Watch Duck Dynasty reruns on some streaming service or torrent. Whatever floats your boat. Because bottom line is, we like to believe things that make us feel good. And maybe this doesn't make you feel good, so you can't believe it. So forget about it. I'm not going to argue with you. do whatever you want. Go trout fishing. I mean, I love that. That's nice. Even if I didn't, do whatever you want. It's unfortunate that people get so triggered and upset when people say crazy things to me all the time. I consider crazy. And I could say to some people to their face that, their focus is too narrow, in my opinion, to have a very good conversation. But I'd have to do that face to face, because you'd have to go down those various threads and explore them and see if I really know what I'm talking about with this other person. And of course, I don't pay attention to what my interlocutor pays attention to. So, I have to learn. You have to explain to me this author and their thinking and whatever you're referring to, which is why I explore a lot of different kinds of content in terms of podcasts and reading and books and so on, and movies and documentaries, because I'm curious, what are these people saying? How are they fabricating or lying, or how are they figuring out the truth, interrogating the situation, exploring something complex? So yeah, I would say that if Kamala can't handle it, or if Kamala fans, because they're blue, they're Democrats, they consider themselves progressives or liberals, I sometimes wonder if people really even know what that means. What does it mean to be quote-unquote liberal? And if you can list your values, let's say the issues that you care about, and just kind of take the culture wars out of it, look at real practical policy positions that you think are extremely important to you and yours and the world and the nation and so on, not just the NIMBY stuff. You can do that, and you can explain to your friend, I'm concerned about Donald Trump, or I think we have to go all in and believe everything Kamala tells us because she's going to do this, that, and the other thing. That's what she said. And then I always think, well, okay, we had 8 years of Reagan. We had a couple years of Bush 1. Then we had 8 years of Clinton. Then we had 8 years of Bush 2. Then we had Obama. Okay, you're going red, blue. Then we had 4 years of Trump. Then we had 4 years of Joe. Where the heck are we now? So why have these parties failed everyone? Not just the red people, because the Democrats fucked us, or the blue people, the Republicans fucked us, but the whole damn system. Maybe you look around and really dig deep in a very smart way like Steven Pinker and say, but we can look at the numbers, we can analyze and extrapolate upon and create stories about the numbers that show just how much progress there is. But then we forget how many people had to die and be imprisoned and treated horribly during the civil rights movement, during the women's movement, the first, phase of feminism, and so on and so forth. LGBTQ, well, let's just go back to being gay wasn't a capital offense type thing, Oscar Wilde type stuff. People fought like crazy. Slaves, antebellum slaves from the U.S. fought like crazy after they were emancipated, and then rules came in all over the South and parts all over the United States to make them powerless nonetheless. And they had to continue to fight. And whenever some decent person comes along and really tells the truth, they get assassinated. I don't know why. Why is that? And here we are, stuck in the same quagmire. It's just as noisy and ugly and stupid as it was 10 years ago, 20 years ago. Why? If you're so damn good, if your party, that's why I keep talking about Simone Weil and her work. If your political party is so damn good that you can't think critically about them, their record, what they say versus what they do, and so on and so forth, what's your problem? Well, you're a human being and you're a homo believer, and it just feels good to pick a side and know you're right and your side is good. And God damn you if you say anything bad about Barack Obama. I voted for Barack Obama, so kill me. But I was horrifically disappointed and disillusioned by his work. Although I'm not saying that he didn't do things that I personally approved of. Oh, Stephen gives them the stamp of approval. It's not important what I think as an individual, but systemically being absorbed the way he was, so willingly. And of course, once he's absorbed, he has to continue that narrative forever, because he's part of the club now. He's been, you have to read about the deep state deeply and not just in terms of, its cultural, mimetic, derogatory sense, conspiracy, fictional sense. But he couldn't get out of it. It's just like, good luck trying not to be absorbed by that machine. That's a nice little corporation. Corporation. You see? I loved it in China the way my friends used to say corporation. Like for corporation and cooperation, they would say corporation. But I'm sorry, I'm not making fun. I just thought it was cute. I make mistakes all the time in my Portuguese and sound like an idiot. So, I'm not all that. But anyway, he got absorbed. And, there you go. If you want to play, you become one of the players, and you're in a different world. The law doesn't matter. You can break the rules. Kevin Spacey, what was the president's name in that TV series? The anti-West Wing. I mean, they have blood on their hands. And of course, like I always say, it's rationalized in the sense that, you find reasons, justifications. We're doing it for the right reason. In order for America to make people free and democratic, we have to control all the resources. Jesus, don't you get that? If we don't, somebody else will, and everybody else is bad. If some country wants to socialize its energy grid or oil resources or something, oh my God, you are in trouble. Because those resources exist for multinational corporations to exploit, and those multinational corporations are the wider U.S. state-influenced power system. So, I don't know. But I think America could do better. I know there are lots of people, but I wonder sometimes if the percentage of sincerely, intellectually curious people in the United States is probably in the single digits. So anywhere from 1 to 9%. And the rest just take whatever is given them that feels about right. And believe it, because it feels good to believe. Feels real good. And it doesn't feel good to doubt things. But once you believe something, then you can doubt everything that's contrary to that belief, which also feels good. Because having an enemy is exciting. And you can compare. That's the difference between them and me, them and us, you and me. That's the difference, you see? So people who are really concerned about what happened on October 7th and just don't give a damn about what happened after that, and what continues to happen day after day after day, I can't understand how these people think. But I have to believe that, or I have to imagine that they're just not that interested in interrogating it. They have taken sides, and that's the end of it. So nothing more needs to be said or done or thought through. So they can really be blind to the complex suite of causes of the event, and the complex aftermath and its horror. And of course, we don't remember anything, so it's like, wow, that's a cool zone. I wonder if this is Hotel Bom Dia. It might be like a guest house or something, because it's kind of configured like that. There's places to play and sit. There's hammocks, and there's a little pond over here. It looks like they have animals, so maybe like a petting zoo or something. I'll have to look this up on the map and see what it is. It definitely looks to me like it's a guest house or something. Always nice to find these little places, rural guest houses. And I don't think there's any excuse for it. If we were more engaged and more aware and better educated, if we inquired more, we wouldn't allow this to happen. We would be voting for peacemakers. We would be voting for people to understand each other, cooperate with one another, to share, to develop partnerships, friendships, so on and so forth, as opposed to lucrative enmities. And these lucrative enmities only benefit a tiny fraction of 1% of the global population. Now, of course, things do trickle down, like people have smartphones now, so they have access to more information and so on, and that's a double-edged sword. And people can eat more, There's going to be a time when you go into a grocery store in the United States and there's not going to be a whole aisle of Cheetos, How many different kinds of Cheetos can we have? It's like, I got choices. This is democracy. And basically, you're just putting poison, vegetable oil into your body. It's just killing you. So I can't go in there. Propriedade privada proibido. They said, don't go in there, man. All right. Don't even think about it. in so many words. So I'm not going to. Yeah, I think we could do better, and then we'd have a better world. And it wouldn't hurt if the United States kind of stayed out of people's business a little bit. Like, I think the world would be more secure without nuclear weapons, but I guess I'm nuts. Gotta have nukes, bro. I think the world would be better off without F-35s and all the rest of it. Killer drones and robots with 30-millimeter Gatling guns on their back. I think we don't need this shit. Look, we're an omnicidal civilization. Oh. Hola. Bom dia. So, and we have been for a long time since we started conquering everything, which means environments, you know, extracting resources and moving on, like I was talking about before about Madeira. And the age of discovery, you know, you go to one place, you grow sugar, slaves are your labor-saving device. And when you tap that region out, you move on to the next one, and you keep going until finally there isn't anything left, and then you use oil and gas and technology as a form of ephemeralization in a way to gather more resources and make more stuff and extract more resources, and this is the cycle, and it never ends, you know, until it ends. So at some point there's overshoot, and that period of overshoot, who knows how long it'll last, how many generations, but at the end of the day it'll most probably crash. You know, unless the replicator comes along and we just take atoms out of the ether and make, you know, cool computer chips out of it. So everything, like I've said many times, is accelerationist. It doesn't really matter if you're a reactionary or a Democrat or what. It's like faster, more, you know, pedal to the metal, life in the fast lane, until it all just goes tits up. Which is to say, you know, mortality. So, yeah, there's so much about this stuff from various different perspectives and periods. The information's out there, both in art and literature and poetry and music and expert academic books, histories, on and on and on. So I've been reading a lot. The stuff I've read in the last 5 years is on my website, but it doesn't make me special, but it gives me a different way of looking at the world. Now that, like I said before, that might hurt some people or make some people feel uncomfortable, because it is much easier just to believe something and leave it at that, and then go fishing. And, you know, choose your enemy, your scapegoat. But life's rough, and you have to live with people, and so when those grocery stores shut down, you know, it's harder to have this global just-in-time supply chain. Things are going to change very drastically, because most of us are so accustomed to our reality now that there's no way we could imagine anything else. Unless we traveled, you know, and went and lived with, let's say, some Mongolian herders on the steppes for a while. You know, you're a cultural anthropologist and you go somewhere in the outback and hang out for a bit. Oh, Rua das Suíças. There you go. Sweet. Down there's the highway. I think I'll avoid that, but I don't want to follow the dirty car. So I'll go down this way. And there's another car going to overtake me. Yeah, so you're an anthropologist and you head off into the wilds and, you know, hang out in the mountains of the Congo, in the jungle with some people. And you got your Jared Diamond. People push back. But anyway, you know, the study of culture, human culture, and you say, oh, there's different people out there. But I'm still glad to fly back to, you know, Toledo, Ohio, or wherever, and be with my people, the civilized people, after my sabbatical in the outback. We don't want to understand the stresses of indigenous peoples, how radically different our worldview is from theirs, how utterly, completely divorced from nature we are. It doesn't feel good to explore those things or interrogate those things, so we don't. We take for granted, and then over time, acceleration means acceleration, right? So it doesn't mean some point we slow down or anything. We keep going faster and faster. There's no incentives in our system, in our way of life, to slow down. So what happens when things break down, when you're going really, really fast? You have a catastrophic failure of everything, and it all blows up. It's not hard to imagine that, and people have written about the collapse of civilizations. And of course, it never happens overnight, right? You could say Rome was, or Byzantium, let's say, Eastern Roman Empire was collapsing for hundreds of years before it finally disappeared. And you wouldn't notice that if you died at 50, right? Not your concern. So, but in an accelerationist world, we're moving so fast that, and we have more information. I mean, we can watch the shit show, we can engage with it, we can, you know, imagine watching Auschwitz on TV every night, or what the Nazis did in Poland, you know, shooting people, putting people in trucks with the emissions of the engine going back in to an enclosure in the back of the truck to get rid of people, you know, just like, it's just, and you're just watching it on TV. But of course now it's I don't know, it's just normalized. We say that Vietnam was the first televised war, and it probably was. You know, you look at the Crimean War way back when, and they said that was one of the first highly photographed war, journalized war, but then you have lots of photos from the Civil War, the American Civil War as well. But yeah, Vietnam, it was difficult to watch, and some young people, God bless them, poor youngsters, didn't like it much. They didn't want to get drafted, they didn't want to go over there. And so it was a mess. You had the Weathermen happening, you know, Black Panthers acting out, and people hated that, you know, a black man with a gun. All that turmoil, all that death and destruction. And we talk about 20 years in Afghanistan or whatever. It never seems to end. And now we're all just yawning. You know, I mean, you have all these soldiers from Ukraine and Russia and mercenaries and so on with their YouTube channels. It's just like, here I am over here in the Oblast, and you know, we're gonna go kill some Russians in that house over there, and you know, here's the Stinger missile, blah blah blah. And we're just watching it on some, you know, social media feed or streaming channel. It's just grotesque. And then on other streaming channels, you have people masturbating all day. Now, is that because when they were 13, they thought, you know, when I grow up, I'm going to be in front of a camera masturbating all day? That's what I want to be when I grow up? I don't know. I doubt it. But people need to do something to make money. And then you have all these social media influencers in the intellectual realm that are all suffering from audience capture. All of them. You know, they're getting attention, and so they really think that they're pretty damn smart. And they get very defensive about their positions because my fans like the way I think. I'm pretty switched on. So, damn you, how dare you besmirch my opinion, beg to differ, slander, libel, whatever. So they get really defensive and they get just boorish, extremely boorish. And after a while it's like, I don't care about these people anymore. You know, and here I am riding around Portugal on a bicycle, blah, blah, blah. And the only thing I can be sure of is that nobody's going to listen to it. So it's kind of therapy. It's talk therapy with myself. If it works for me, it works for me. Yeah, so it's, I don't think people are going to really do much. Like, there's not going to be another civil rights type movement. The anti-Vietnam, anti-Gaza thing, I think it's going to fizzle and people are going to get bored with it and they're going to move on to the next outrage. The players and their institutions have us wound up, and they play us like a fiddle. Our emotions, our beliefs, our thought processes. It's a science. You can study the science of persuasion and misdirection, street magic. Some people call it street epistemology. That's different. Bogosian, that's not what I'm talking about. But, ooh, some big crows. Nice to see. I'm always happy to see big crows. And here you can see these beautiful, this little run of olive trees. So I think about these people in Ukraine, Russians and Ukrainians, that these tree lines, it's a lifeline. And then they have this empty territory they have to cross. And it's full of mines. And there's artillery coming in, cluster munitions and helicopters, gunships and airplanes. It's a nightmare. And just these little trees is another 5 minutes or day of survival. Why the hell are they fighting? And it's really just too easy, too willfully ignorant to just blame it on one guy. There's a lot going on there. People say, I want the hostages released. Well, I don't think Israel wants the hostages released, and much has been written about that. What would you do if you wanted them to be released? assassinate the guy you're supposed to negotiate with in Doha. You know, the guy who lives in Doha, for God's sake. Assassinate him in Iran. Anyway, I won't get into that. People just get pissed off. But anyhow, you know, it's like, yeah, if you want the hostages released, how many thousands of prisoners are held, some of them children, without charge in Israel, way before October 7th, for decades? Are they, so one man's hostage is another man's prisoner, right? I mean, and of course, if you're on the Israeli Zionist side, then they can do no wrong at all, ever. There's no limits. And they truly believe that, and they can believe that because Uncle Sam backs them to the hilt, financially and materially. So they can do whatever they want. But for people that think I just want the hostages released, it's like, well, what would you need to do to negotiate? You'd have to have a ceasefire, wouldn't you? You'd have to stop the killing from the other side, wouldn't you? Wouldn't that be a good start? It's not the Hatfield and McCoys we're talking about. This isn't an equal feud. You have an occupied group of people living in an open-air prison for decades, for a long time anyway. Decades, the problem since 45. But, you know, this Gaza problem for a long time. Anyway, I don't go into that. So many people have done good work on that. And there are dozens of books that have been written over the last, 20 years on this shit. 30 years, 40 years. There's stuff going back to the 50s. So what would you do to get the hostages released? I mean, really? Well, the idea is to kill everybody. And that's the Hannibal directive, which is, it's a dead Israeli soldier is better. This guy who leads Hamas now, before they assassinated the other guy, he was a prisoner for 20 years, and he speaks fluent Hebrew, and he knows what it's like to be a prisoner, and he's a lot more hardline than the other guy was, in terms of uncompromisingly wanting Palestinians to have their own nation state. And you have to remember, Israel is a young nation state, and it only exists because the West supports it, and probably out of guilt. At least some of the motivations are from guilt. The other ones is the aircraft carrier in the Middle East type thing, but whatever. And the Jewish diaspora has gone there and done well, extremely well. Anyway, people get so mad, it's like they fight for reasons. They have their reasons, and their justifications for wanting to fight back. And when you're more powerful, you're like, dude, don't make me kill you, okay? Don't fight me, all right, dude? I can squash you like a fly. Don't make me kill you. I don't want to kill you. That's what the bully says. I don't want to kill you, bro. I think I'll pause here. That was a nice place to take a break. Wherever I go, it's good for me. Yeah, I stopped. I was using my other camera for video, but I screwed up the exposure. You're in the sunlight looking at a small screen, and you really have to take your time and look carefully at the exposure. Point at something that looks kind of what it's going to look like on your face and get a ballpark, and then try to look at the tools in the window on the screen to see if you're in the ballpark. Otherwise, whatever. Total waste, man. But it's okay. I just feeling repetitive anyway. Kind of repeating what I was saying when I was riding earlier. Pouco das Vinhas. Okay. I've been over there. So, what else? Yeah, at some point you have to give up. It's like, what's the point of knowing anything anyway? When most people just don't give a shit. Or if they do, they just care about what they pay attention to in the course of the day without any critical inquiry whatsoever. For a while in the in the 2000s, up until about maybe 2011 or so, 12, I thought I guess it was because of the podcasts and books I was reading and whatnot. I thought we were on this upward trajectory of people just getting a lot better at critical inquiry. Skeptical Inquiry magazine. But it seemed like it. Susan Jacoby, Steve Novella, stuff like that. In the States, in the little zeitgeist, in the podcast zeitgeist. But I guess most people didn't pay any attention to it anyway. I forget that I was still an oddball nerd for listening to that shit. Asking somebody in 2008 to listen to Bill Moyers' journal. You don't know who Bill Moyers is. But, people would be like, I don't get you, man. I don't understand where you're coming from. What's that all about? So, yeah, but back then I thought we were gonna get better, but it just got worse. So I remember buying a knockoff iPhone in Shenzhen. I forget what year that was. It was a long time ago. Yeah, I'm in Shenzhen, and they had this little app phone that looked like an iPhone and had a camera and stuff. It wasn't an iPhone at all, but kind of had some functionality and stuff, and it was cheap. And just for fun, I got it to play with when I was across the border in mainland China from Hong Kong. And then, of course, I got an iPhone when they came out. Before that, I had my iPod and stuff, and I used to download podcasts and listen to them on public transportation, and sometimes at home when doing chores. So I enjoyed that, and then having everything kind of integrated, consolidated on a smartphone. It's just awesome. Take really nice photographs and share really easily with people. Then after a while it just gets so noisy, TikTok and all these other apps and platforms come along, and after a while it becomes pathological. But of course it is one of these double-edged things, you know. It's a lot of good and also a lot of potential for not so good stuff. Oh, I'm in Turquel. Oh, that's nice. Turquel. Va bene. That was kind of a fun way to come down, come into Turquel. It's been a while. So, yeah, and year by year it just gets weirder and weirder. You know, I'm curious, so I look at Reddits and subreddits and threads on Quora and whatnot, just to see what people are on about. And yeah, it's pretty, a lot of narrow-mindedness, dogmatism, and fairly uninformed people speaking very passionately about something they really don't know that much about. And you simply can't admit, oh, I want to go by this restaurant real quick. There's a guy who runs this restaurant that I want to talk to about acting. I don't know. You want to act? No, dude, I'm a chef. Fuck off. What's your problem? You want to use me? Actually, this restaurant here is very good, but it looks like it's closed already. That's unfortunate. It was, wow. I think it is closed. Evangelista. I don't know. Yeah, it looks pretty close to me. That's a shame. That was a elevated Portuguese restaurant, so dishes you don't normally find in the countryside. Very, very good stuff. Good food. And lovely people were running it. It's hard to have a restaurant, and then this market here isn't very big, you know, and if it's a specialized elevated dishes, ooh, is this like before or after the festival? So I don't know if they're gonna have one or if they already had one. So in the summer, every single town has a festival, a big party. You can see over there where they eat, play games, drink beer. I don't drink now, so I don't miss it that much, but these festivals, it's always fun to have beer. So this is where they all have dinner in here. Hey kids. Festa da Serra. Let's see. Oh. Domingo Augusto. Oh yeah, today is the Ascension of Mary, is it? Virgin Mary, or is it tomorrow? So this party is going to be 24, 25, 26 de Agosto. Sounds good to me. I think I'll make it. So they're just prepping this thing. It's kind of an ongoing, they're going to have their booths here. Awesome. Another little restaurant. And down here is the Turquel market. So yeah, I can still make this party. It's a good place to come for a party. Looks like they're partying every night here. Yeah, so the Virgin Mary, if you're Catholic, and especially if you're a European Catholic, the mom of Jesus, she didn't just die and her body rot, like in a casket somewhere in a cave. She's not corporeal, she's elevated. So she ascended and just taken up, absorbed, assumed by heaven in her earthly form, her soul, her body. So her body's, you're not going to go anywhere in the world and find relics, bones of Mary, because her bones are in heaven. And no part of her earthly body, are not a tooth to be found of Mary. And it's a big deal in the Catholic Church. It's a good time to go to Fatima. It's if you're gonna look at Catholics, I always like to see them when they're at their most faithful, when they're contemplating the great mystery of Jesus' mom rising up into heaven, her body, her soul, and how wonderful that is for everybody to know that through Jesus Christ you can transcend death and all that stuff. And I find it beautiful, whether there's non-overlapping magisteria like Stephen Jay Gould said, the fact is, there's nature, and we have tools to understand how nature works, and we understand a few things. And then there's mystery and stories and myths and religions and beliefs. And before we had all these tools to inquire into nature, how it works and all that, what we had were beliefs and stories, things and miracles and whatnot. And then the people who were like gatekeepers to that mysterious realm, whether you're a shaman or a priest, the oracle at Delphi or whatever. So that was the way you understood quote unquote reality. It was explanatory. It explained things, good and evil, and life and death, and your place in the universe, all that kind of stuff. Then, of course, logic and reason kicked in, and you get apologetics and philosophy. I mean, first of all, obviously, philosophy going way, way back, pre-Socratic. And then people like Thomas Aquinas and Martin Luther and whatnot. And then all the other cool people who would analyze their work and philosophize on it. Swedenborg. Just pick a name. Anyway, very cool stuff. But I think again, I love this word, behooves us, to pay attention to science, logic, reason. Because we're in a precarious situation now where human beings are acting out like gods. And we're literally doing some pretty awful things that impact all life on Earth as well as our own species' potential for existence. You don't care about that, I know, because more important things to concern yourself with. But all these discussions about religion, all these sects, Anabaptists, Jehovah's Witnesses, Scientology made a fool of me. All of these things for all of these thousands of years, and look where we are. We got airplanes, high technology, all this stuff, but we're still in the same pickle. Nobody can agree on anything. And you can't have this live and let live thing. I mean, there used to be in the 19th century public executions in the United States, right? People would go watch people get hung. It was a big event. The kids would go. You take the whole family. Witch burning and so on, earlier than that. And we claw our way out of it. Yeah, Susan Jacoby wrote a book about Ingersoll, Robert Ingersoll, the great agnostic, back in the 19th century. He's a really fascinating character, brilliant thinker, free inquiry. A wonderful biblical critic. But she wrote a very definitive book on that guy. It's quite good. I don't know why I'm thinking of Susan Jacoby now, because some guy mentioned her in an article I read, so she came back to my mind. And I was looking on the search engines about, anti-intellectualism, literacy rates, and so on, because I was concerned about people's level of discourse. When they see something they don't like, they have a very simplistic way of saying, I don't like it, without really delving into much of the details. Kind of an aversion to knowing more, to learning more. And so I was thinking, oh man, maybe there's just a tiny percentage of people in the world that care to look into things more deeply. Maybe that's the case. And if that's the case, what's the point? I mean, for sure you don't want to argue with somebody because you'll just hurt their feelings. But I can't help but share some links and books and stuff. I know it makes people mad, or at least they think I'm an asshole because I'm suggesting that they could learn something more about the thing that they have an opinion on. So they have an opinion or an aversion or whatever, and you say, well, you could look at this, that, and the other thing and get another perspective, get some other perspectives on it. And they think, what a fucking asshole. I'm deleting and blocking this jerk. I'll never talk to him again. Because it's uncomfortable. What you believe in makes you feel good. And somebody says maybe your belief is half wrong or half right. And it's like, how dare you attack me personally? What's wrong with you? And then you get labeled, some simplistic label. Just pick a label, it doesn't matter, just pick one. Pick it out of a hat. I wonder what's up there. I wonder, so I'm gonna go check it out. So you're this, that, or the other thing. So the dialogue, the sharing, just ends, right? I don't want to look at that. You're an idiot. And that's the end of it. Honestly, to be a player, like the character in my film, you have to be everything to everybody. So you have to cultivate this world where nobody knows who you really are, except maybe a few people, and they don't even know. Because in order to have the relationship with even those few people, you had to compromise, you had to you had to play along. And so the way to be successful, if you have a privately held company that's more or less independent and can't be fucked with because it makes a lot of money, you know, you mirror, you know, that sales technique where you mirror your customer. You want to dress like them, talk like them. If they play golf, you play golf. If they play squash, you play